These are the dances of the Headhunters of Borneo, whose grisly past was kept secret from the outside world. Their bravery was measured in human heads. Today, a team of American rafters paddles into the steamy jungles of Borneo, where water snakes and uncertainty follow them everywhere. Their visit to an old headhunting village reveals a changed culture, very much at peace with its savage past. Making their way out to the coast, the rafters succumb to torrential rains and jungle fevers before meeting the challenge of the big white water. That's today on Mutual of Omaha's Spirit of Adventure. It's a place where you or I might perish in a week, but it's home to the Dayak people of central Borneo. Rivers are the only clear paths through a jungle alive with leeches and snakes and giant tree limbs. The vegetation grows so fast that it would cover the village in a couple of weeks if the Dayaks let it. The tribe lives in a series of longhouses raised up on stilts. All of their building materials come from the forest. Each longhouse is a community unto itself. Young and old share the same space in the longhouse, a tradition that began as a means of protection against raiding headhunters. Today, that past seems very far away. It wasn't so long ago that the Dayak and other tribes were known as the Headhunters of Borneo. Headhunting was an important part of their culture. Conservators here at the Smithsonian Natural History Museum are working on Dayak artifacts, preserving the link between a savage past and a peaceful present. Today, the Dayaks find themselves in the midst of change once again, and their traditions are in danger of disappearing altogether. North of Australia and south of Vietnam, Borneo floats in a kingdom of islands. Getting there is half the journey. Our story begins in a town that means turned over plank. But the Dayaks, secluded in the island's central rainforest, aren't so easy to reach. ABC sports commentator Diana Nyad takes us into the heart of Borneo.
This is the story of two very different cultures. The Dayaks, on the one hand, are remote people striving for a more modern life and in many ways being forced into one. On the other hand, a group of U.S. women rafters, here to challenge the river bow, but also here in their visit with the Dayaks to find maybe a simpler set of values. They don't have very much in common. They don't speak a common language. They have no common experience. And obviously, they have no common history. What they do have in common is the adventure of the river itself. For hundreds of years, the rivers of Borneo have flowed through Dayak culture. The rivers were the only link between isolated tribes. Life seemed to spring from the rivers, first as a rich source of food, and later as a place endowed with supernatural meaning, where the good and the evil spirits of the river exerted their influence over the Dayaks. River images were prominent in the headhunting era as well, and most headhunters used the river as a means of surprise attack on their enemies. After their long journey to Borneo, the team of women rafters prepared to enter this world of rivers and river spirits. More than 100,000 square miles of primary rainforest, home to orangutans, leopards, and king cobras, and home to the Dayaks, descended centuries ago from Chinese ancestors. Deep in the heart of the rainforest, we had to cut and burn this clearing for the chopper. All Wet stands for Women's Exploratory Team, and indeed, the team members seemed comfortable in new environments. Sweat bees drank from our skin without stinging. The oranges were the sweetest we'd ever tasted, and downriver from us, only 3 days by raft, the Dayak villagers anticipated Well, to tell you the truth, I wouldn't know what they imagined us to be. At this point, the image that each of us had of one another was something from picture books. But in a short time, we would, in fact, meet face to face. All from the western United States, the all-wet team members grew up exploring the outdoors. And in recent years, their passion for the Earth's most ferocious rivers had been shaped by experiences in South America, Africa, and British Columbia.
Where is it? A snake, a one-eyed, what? Where? That's a pipe moving right there. Guys, we don't want that thing to jump at us. Well, it looks like a python.
Well, the pythons are not so nice.
Python won't hurt you.
That's not a python. No, pythons are green.
No, they're not. No. Yes, they are. I used to...
The sound of daily life in the village of Lebusan grew louder as we approached, and the rice pounding was incessant. The team chose to paddle rather than row their boats with oars, giving them greater sink as they stroked through the water, but the technique also left them dangerously perched on the pontoons. Kayaks, far more maneuverable than rafts, provide a vantage point from closer to surface level. But in the rafts, one person, one set of eyes in the stern of the boat must assess the waters ahead, and right or wrong, the team has to go with her call. The blonde in the stern, told me 3 days on a fast river brings you closer to someone than 2 years of lunches. I knew then they had made a good choice for captain. The elders of Lebusan prepared to relate to us the story of their people through images and songs. Before the last half-day paddle to meet the Dayaks, the team stopped to spruce themselves up. Though the women had begun to long for a hot shower, this was far better than anything they could get at home. The river carried the echo of Dayak voices before the women could actually see the village. The encouraging sound seemed to lift the boats out of the water. This was an equally unique moment for both of our groups, always to be remembered. The Dayaks seemed to stare out at us through an antique past, and with caution, lest we should mistakenly attribute the headhunting legacy of these parts to these peaceful people. As we said hello, they said abakabar. We tried it. It is perhaps the greatest education of all, the unspoken exchange between two cultures with no common roots. These Dayaks were apparently in transition, a mix from the loincloths of yesterday to the blue jeans of today. As we began to establish our lives in the village, children came close, expressing in their eyes a curiosity about our ways. And it was the children who first opened up and shared their smiles and their touch with us.
Yeah. What's happening? What's happening? Yeah. What's happening? Yeah. Yeah.
The mood of contentment among Lebeson's 400 people was all around us, but the impending river run was foremost on our minds. You know, I was going to ask you about the roles that you all play.
I think I'm a little more brash than the others, and a lot of that has to do with, you know, my background. I'm not a river guide. Those guys are. They've perhaps seen people die in the river, and they also have the responsibility of lots of tourists and stuff. So we'll be at a rapid, and they'll be really hesitant, and I honestly think that they can do it, but I don't think they know it. It's hard to tap yourself. You need someone else a lot of times to do it, and sometimes I play that because I tend to be just a little more, some people would say reckless, but I mean, a lot of these rapids that we could die on, but I have this kind of intrigue with if my life is going to flash in front of my eyes, I don't want it to be boring.
As the Dyaks continued their round of daily chores, harvesting rice, for example, the team members seemed always to keep one eye on the river. Nevertheless, they immersed themselves in village life. Working seemed pure pleasure in Lebeson. They fished the river by sweeping palm fronds through the shallows, forcing small fish into nets. Notice the cups on the women's ears. The small fry go directly from the river into these cups, where the morning's catch is stored. Pretty resourceful. Each longhouse stretches for roughly 200 yards, with subdivisions for as many as 8 families. Our interpreter was an Englishman who had married into one of Lebeson's families. Dave Ferguson and his wife Frida have moved down to the coast, but they are still emotionally tied to the village. Frida's mother wears traditional gold and brass earrings, but the stretched earlobes are no longer popular with the young women. Dave lived in London for many years before moving to Borneo, so I asked him what he had found to be different about Dayak life.
The important thing in life is people. Here, people live with people, not against people. They live together. We live in separate boxes. These people live in one big longhouse. Old people live with people here. Where I come from and where you come from, old people live in old people's homes. We lock them away. Here, they have the pleasure of playing with the grandchildren and with everybody else's children, and everybody mixes together. I think it's terrific.
It did seem a happy place to live, and each person contributed what they were best able to give. Men worked the more taxing jobs, such as crushing sugar cane. It hadn't changed in 50 years. Long ago, the Dyaks lived as hunter-gatherers. The work was hard, but communal living provided all that they needed. Their concept of beauty remained unchanged through the decades, and so too their concept of survival. The murderous practice of headhunting still flourished as recently as 70 years ago. Village war dances were intended to arouse the headhunting parties. Imagine a place where human heads were trophies. Within a village, prestige could be measured by the number of skulls hanging from the longhouse. The memory of these atrocities embarrasses the Dyaks of today. Their reputation as savages kept the Dyaks isolated from the outside world, but recently the discovery of gold in the rivers of central Borneo has motivated the tribe to make contact with the civilizations on the coast. Although they only pan up a few ounces a year, they barter their meager stores of gold for items such as fuel and salt. The Dyaks in Lebeson are ashamed of their headhunting identity, but they accept it and recreated a headhunting raid for us. When the men were off hunting, the women were vulnerable. A hostile tribe approached silently. Alerted by the screams of the women and children, the men returned to defend their own. Success or failure was judged not by land gained or lost, but by a head count. About 100 years ago, the Dyaks themselves started to realize the importance of bringing headhunting to an end. The population of young men was being decimated, threatening the fabric of Dyak life. First ceremonies and then peace conferences were held, seeking to abolish the practice. Another reenactment was one of many peace wars fought during the early part of the century. The man on the left plays Jalang Apui, a legendary crusader who decried headhunting, sort of an Abraham Lincoln figure in Dyak culture. He asks another tribe to stop the violence. When they refuse, his own people decide that the only choice is to fight for peace. Jalang Apui led battle after battle until a new morality finally overtook the human injustices of the past. Headhunting became a legacy from which the Dyaks were determined to disassociate themselves. Away from the river, a scout was launched to get a bird's eye view of what the women rafters would be up against.
And we're out of here. Look at that. Yeah, oh, boy.
Just a few months before our arrival, 4 Dyaks had left the village of Lebusan and made it through the 31 separate rapids of the gorge. Without the river, it was a 3-day walk through the jungle to get medical help, so use of the lower bow was of great interest to the Dyaks. The descent had been extremely dangerous, even though it was undertaken during the dry season when the river is low. But it was now the height of the rainy season, and the river was raging. Steep, high walls of limestone meant no way out for the rafters, and the dense forest seemed impenetrable.
Yeah, I would think so, because it's certainly not a keeper. It's just quite a gorge, though. Now, look at these boils.
Yeah. That might be tough.
Oh, look, oh my goodness.
I'm not sure I'd want to run that. No, that's nasty. I wouldn't want to go near that.
It's not nearly as high as it has been, that's for sure.
The scouts took away a last foreboding image of the gorge and reported their not-so-good news to the others.
I would say that, I mean, as far as a raft is concerned anyway, no way. The water is moving at, I figured, 10 to 12 to 15 miles an hour all the time. When it slows up, there are eddies, though. There are still eddies. But when it starts moving into the big rapids, the walls get pretty sheer. There are some exposed rocks that you could stand on, but you couldn't portage a raft on it without making this the portage adventure of your life.
The rapids are real defined, though. I mean, they're serious whitewater, and it comes and it goes, and then it's moving so fast in between.
And then the holes are big enough to flip you and trash you.
After our discussion out there at the chopper, I feel like there's a lot going on with each of us, and I don't think everybody feels real 100% comfortable with that conversation. Is that true?
If I come this far, I really have to know that that river is impossible, and honestly that we made that decision.
We as a team have always been responsible for our decisions, and I think that it's totally valid that we question Newsom's opinion, because if we'd listened to everybody's opinion that's ever told us something wasn't unrunnable, we wouldn't have done our first descent.
It had been a disappointing day, but the festivities of the night beckoned to cheer us up. We were treated to dances passed down through the generations. This is what the team needed to take their minds off the river: relaxation and laughter. came the ultimate compliment. They took a big jab at us, mimicking our constant coming and going by helicopter. In a matter of hours, they had fashioned this replica out of leaves and branches and mud. We had found we had a language in common after all. The Dayaks of Lebanon find refreshment and recreation in the river, and a 10-foot rise in the water level doesn't affect their routine one bit. But the rising river was a concern to the all-wet team.
More than anything right now, I'm trying not to get caught up in the emotional, maybe the emotional conflict and all the emotions that are going on right now between everybody, which is mostly just indecision.
We're here at the heart of the rainy season right now, and it's real unpredictable right now. Today, the river's high. Yesterday, it was low. It was lower than when we first came into the village.
Are you scared?
Definitely.
The difficult thing is that once we enter the gorge, there's no turning back. There's no way out.
This trip has a potential to be a disaster, to be a true epic.
And if it's just there's a little chance that I'm not going to die, then I want to go down that river. Even if it's that little chance, I want to take that chance.
It was frustrating to be able to play in the calm tributary that ran through Lebanon while only 4 miles away. The prospect of the rain-swollen gorge was dampening team spirits. But no amount of disappointment could eat into the friendships we had made in the village. For us, the height of this festival of give and take came when the kids saw themselves on our video screen, and they repaid our technology with smiles. It was time for a final chopper scout of the river. Whitewater frothed into waves down in the gorge. Beth and Julie didn't like what they saw.
Oh, nice wave. It has that very inconsistent high water look about it. Look at that boil against the wall. That's an amazing...
That's probably a 20-foot drop right there. We can't even get the perspective. And you see the power of the water from here. Look at that hole. Now that's instant death. Just amazing. Now look at the compression wave off the tree on the side. Oh my gosh. What absolutely amazes me is how much water is coming back on itself.
The jungle itself is so impassable. I definitely don't want to come down here, Jules. There's no question in my mind at this water level.
The Dayaks had made a trip down the gorge during low water when the conditions were very much easier. When the women asked about the Dayaks trip, they were told that the river is the sole domain of men. Plen Jiao described their autumn descent so that the women might understand the enormity of the challenge. Foremost on Plen Jiao's mind was the appearance of an evil river spirit in the gorge, one that indicated to him that no man, and certainly no woman, should pass that way again.
He was down there, it was kind of eerie, quiet, I suppose. I wasn't actually in the same place as him. And he saw these two images. And they were, as far as he's concerned, they were, you know, they were human beings, and they actually made noises. Like that. And he ran away, sure. You know, he was scared, petrified. Ran up to the top of the rock, and there he noticed a fossilized shape of a dragon snake, what they call Ulanaga, which is a kind of myth. It's like the Loch Ness Monster or something like that. Everybody talks about this dreadful snake that's got, you know, terrible fangs, and it grabs you in the water if you swim and stuff like that. It's like a bogeyman story. Anyway, that's part of their mythology.
The hardest part about deciding to forego the gorge was saying goodbye to the people of Lebanon.
Our morale, I think, is up. It's really up. There was a great deal of initial disappointment about not going down into the canyon, because we'd heard so much about Bon Brom, and it was such an adventurous place to be. And I think that the opportunity that we've had to come and be with this village, the real joy in people and the real compensation, which overcompensates for the river, has been getting to know these people and live with them. And now the adventure part of it is realized in our jungle trek.
For a team of high adventurers, this plan sounded promising. they would undertake a jungle trek around the gorge and try to put onto the Bow River below the big rapids. The river was their natural element, but they were gung-ho for this new experience as well.
Being in the jungle causes us instantly to forget about the river because we're dealing with a whole new element here, and it requires our concentration as much as a Class 5 river would and as much as a canyon would. Every step we take, we have to be aware. We have to watch the porters and make sure that they're doing okay and watch ourselves.
On the jungle trek, the women stopped periodically for what they kiddingly called a leech check.
God, I feel certain I have leeches in me.
I think you better stop and check.
Leech check.
Check it out. When they get on you, you just see them right away and just flick them off.
I kind of like the idea that they have to burrow through my sock for a while. Just
They can get in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, Adrian, you had a couple between your toes, and you just kind of flicked them off. Yeah, well, it's all psychological.
No, I know. I mean, I thought they were going to be huge, and I still can't get used to the fact that they're kind of small.
Well, you should have seen that one on my forehead.
That's right.
That was the one that bled. Yeah.
That was this long.
It'd been in my hat for probably 20 minutes.
Yeah, and it was all psychological, your reaction, wasn't it? Was it really that long?
It was that long, and we pulled it out, and there was just a stream of blood going down her forehead.
Whose are these?
Time for the boat. Let's go.
The Dyaks in their bare feet seemed more sure of foot than the women in their trekking shoes. If by definition an adventure is more thrilling when the destination is unknown, this adventure was becoming more thrilling by the hour. For the all-wet team, rivers are the unparalleled source of beauty and life experience. They were relieved to be out of the jungle mud and back into the rhythm of paddling downstream. They hadn't scouted this far down past the Bow River Gorge, but they assumed at least some whitewater lay ahead. Nancy Wiley and Beth Rippons accompanied the rafters in their kayaks. Sure enough, the volume of the water picked up. It was time to throw backs and arms into it.
Yeah, hard forward. You can do it. Look at you. Here comes the turn. Yeah.
This was new territory for the team, and no rapids should ever be taken for granted. Nancy headed down a tongue of water and braced herself for a rough ride. The rafters saw that Nancy was in trouble. They stroked to the rescue. Nancy was alone. She was turned and overturned repeatedly by the tremendous surge. She had 15 years' experience in hairy kayak situations, but this was not looking good. Finally, she freed herself from the boat, had a long swim, and caught up with the kayak downriver. They say it's one of life's truly lonely moments to watch a friend fight for her life on a river, unable to get there yourself. And when it's all over, all you can do is laugh about it.
Is that fun? For a while it was fun. Did it look like I was having fun?
As the team floated out to flat water, they were left with the bittersweet feeling of having come through safely, but also of having skipped the gorge. They put their heads together to come up with another river they might challenge before heading all the way home. While making plans, the team was surprised to raft into a logging camp near the confluence of the Bow and Mahakam rivers. All of us had heard about the devastation of Borneo's great rainforests, but it was a shock to actually see that destruction firsthand. had seen how the Dyaks were protected and nurtured by the forest. Clearly, its removal by lumber companies would lead to the disintegration of their culture. Borneo holds some of our Earth's last genuine rainforest habitats, but the forest is being clear-cut at the apparently unstoppable rate of 66 acres per day. This is the tragedy of modern Borneo. Because of greed alone, the Dayak way of life was approaching its final chapter. This camp of destruction was only a few bends in the river away from the people of Lebusan. It had taken the Dayaks many, many years to abolish headhunting and to win back pride in their own culture. Now they face a battle against the lumber companies, one that they are ill-equipped to fight. This group adores nature, and it shatters them to travel the world over and witness its demise. The sweet memories of Borneo were upriver, with the laughing children and the long-eared women, the handmade helicopter and the perfect pineapples. Now, the team moved past rafts of logs, eager for another river journey in this part of the world. It would come sooner than even they had hoped.
That's good. Right turn once. Yeah.
While in Borneo, the women rafters had had an exhilarating personal experience, but their skills as whitewater experts had gone untested. Here, on a river in Australia, those skills would finally be put to the test. Sydney had been a short plane hop from Borneo. From there, the team traveled over eucalyptus forests to Inverness, where the Gwydir River awaited them. The tension of Borneo had faded away, and with it, memories of an isolated jungle and an impassable river also faded.
That's because, no, I think stupid should be on top.
Eric Ward, a Gwydir river guide, joined the women. And Brett Barley, a veteran of the Gwydir, also helped out. As they put on the river, the all-wet team was now down to 4. 3 members had returned home to commitments. If it was action they had come for, it was coming up fast. Caroline was bounced out of the boat, a rude welcoming from the Gwydir. It wasn't picture perfect, but they did make it through. Put yourself in Caroline Paul's seat for this ride, your front left. In a 1/10 of a second, you're yanked headfirst over the pontoon.
Thanks a lot. Where? Who fell out? I did. Who disappeared underneath the boat?
That happened really quick. That was great.
Oh, yeah.
We're running it again? Well, we're doing it again.
We'll go and have another go.
Okay. All right, I guess I'm going with you guys too. Excellent. All right.
In any sport where fear is a factor, it's helpful to climb right back in the saddle. Caroline needed to run this rapid successfully. And since another raft had yet to make the run, she would have that chance. Once again, Caroline paddles front left. On the second pass, there was no problem at all. Team confidence was up as they rolled toward yet a steeper set of rapids. Now that was a serious run. The team was on a roll, but the next rapid downriver was going to require close scrutiny. They call this dead-end falls. It had never been run by anyone. It was one of those percentage rapids. If you hit the line just right, it could be a piece of cake. But if you were off by as little as a foot on either side, it could mean disaster. A serious discussion was underway.
Brett, this is a pretty wicked-looking rapid. Has anybody ever run this to your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge. I know we certainly haven't.
Never?
No, never. It's too risky. If you get the exact line that you're after, you'll probably go through. But if you're even a foot too far to the left, it could be a very nasty sort of a swim. You might be in there for quite a while. So that's the reason we've never shot it.
I think there's a good possibility that that could happen.
Yeah.
Here, yeah. But I'm prepared to take that risk at this point. I feel like we have a good, strong team, and people are real go for it, and I feel comfortable going for it.
Yeah, well, that's fine. Just make sure that when you take off up the top, you're 100% in tune with each other and you get that line.
Yeah.
Because if you don't get that line, there's not an awful amount we can do up here, okay? There's not that much we can do. So you're by yourselves, basically.
Thanks for your support. I know you'll do what you can.
Yeah, we'll do what we can. Sit there with our hands together and pray.
Their first move was to get a rescue boat into position in case anyone got trapped under the surface and held down by the royal. Caroline was known as the risk taker in the group, but she could see that Dead End Falls was no place to be cavalier.
Hey, Rennie. How you doing? How do you feel? I don't know. I looked at that first part, and as I was coming down, it looked great. It looked real doable. Looked like an easy line. And then I looked down here, and my first thought was just, no. It just looks too powerful. Well, Renee, I want you to know that you have to do what you feel comfortable with, and whatever you decide is fine. We still love you, we still accept you, and we still want you back in the boat after the rapid.
Ideally, they could use a fourth to replace Renee. Both muscle and weight in the boat would make for a better balanced descent.
Brett, we have a proposition for you. We would like to know if you would be interested in going in a raft down the Stratford.
No.
No hesitation even for
There you go. No. Look, if I felt comfortable about shooting it, I would have done it 3 trips ago.
Right.
But I don't, so I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it in anything, even
Right.
a kayak. I'm more at home in a kayak than I am in a raft.
Yeah. All right, okay. Well, let's go for it, the 3 of us.
These were not optimum circumstances, but the 3 had enough bravado to believe they could make it through. Remember, 1 foot too far to the left and they might not get out. So, a small moment in rafting history for the all-wet team. The first descent of Dead End Falls.
That was awesome. I was shaking so hard. You were. You were, baby. Yeah. Good job. All right. Oh, awesome. Beautiful. Just beautiful.
So that that tongue was actually a lot bigger than when we were on it than it looked from the side of the river.
And you know, it seemed to sort of open up too. I could really.
I think it opened up for us.
I think it did.
You
too.
did.
The parting of the seas.
Did you guys hang on through the drop?
Oh heck no! I tore my paddle. Did you see it?
I wasn't watching.
I hung on. In fact, I think I yelled, "Hang on!" I mean, she was probably hanging on. I think I was yelling at myself.
Good job, you guys.
Really,
all right,
good job.
Well done.
Nice call.
I had noticed these women were always looking for two things. One, a reputation for running what they call insane rivers, and two, a strong, confident sense of self. In the heart of Kalimantan on the island of Borneo and on Australia's Guaida River, they fulfilled both of those hopes.
For anybody that wants to progress in river running, they need to learn how to deal with their fear. And I think that can be especially difficult for women because as children, we're not always encouraged to challenge our fears.
In river running, I don't think that you ever completely overcome your fears. Challenging my fears and learning from them was a major issue for me in both Kalimantan and here in Australia.
I don't think that our trip to Kalimantan was a failure because it was an exploratory, and the nature of an exploratory is that you don't know what's ahead of you. And sometimes you learn just as much about yourself when you can't do something. We came across a lot of hardships in Borneo, but there's something really intriguing about working together on a dangerous river. So it wasn't until we got to Australia that we really came together as a team.
This journey took us to remote parts of the world and gave us another perspective on how people live their lives. I know that the memory of our visit to the Dayak people will be alive in all of us for a long time to come, because here was a life far different from our own, where happiness and kindness and hospitality were valued above all else. The Dayak's immediate acceptance of us stood for so much that we seem to have forgotten in our own lives. It was one of those rare trips that took on more meaning as you got farther away from it. I'm Diana Nyad.
Three weeks from today, ABC sports commentator Peggy Fleming joins me in Africa for a look at the poaching wars that threaten to wipe out the rhinoceros. Its horn is worth its weight in gold, and the illegal slaughter of the species is testament to a consuming human greed. The black rhino has lost 95% of its population in just 15 years, and if the poaching continues, we might as well close the book on one of Africa's oldest residents. We'll also get a close-up look, maybe too close, at the ivory poaching that still persists. Hold it. Just hold it. Just act like a baboon. That's 3 weeks from today on Mutual of Omaha, Spirit of Adventure.